What's up, everybody? This is your host, Dan Giffen. Before we get started in today's podcast episode with Andrew Huang, which I'm really excited about, I want to give you a quick update with liveproducersonline.com. Let you know we're going to be doing a ton of more webinars with professional producers. We have John Myers. He's a platinum audio engineer. We have a lot of other people in the lineup. If you want to keep track of our upcoming webinar events, go to liveproducersonline.com/webinar. And you can click the green follow button and you won't miss out on any upcoming events that we're having. All of our basic and pro members for live producers are going to be able to access unlimited replays of all of our webinars. You'll also get access to our downloads page, which will be blowing up in the new year of 2019. And we're going to be having sample packs, fully produced Ableton projects that you can dissect and add to your sound library, Max for live devices, and you get them for free as a member, a basic or a pro member. Pro members, we just added a new feature called Project Feedback. Once a month, you can submit your project files and get a video feedback from a professional producer, and do that once a month as a pro member to help take your music to the next level. That's enough about that. Just wanted to give you an update with what's going on with liveproducersonline.com. Sign up, check it out. And now for today's podcast episode with Andrew Huang. So thanks everybody for joining us for another episode of the Ableton Live Music Producer Podcast. Today we have an extra special guest. Andrew Huang is joining us, and he is a Toronto-based music and video producer. He's released over 2,000 songs in a wide range of genres. He's really well known for his musicianship on his YouTube channel. He's streaming over 190 million views and has over 1.4 million subscribers. If you haven't checked out his video channel, do that very soon. I'm excited to have him on the podcast today. I feel like he has a lot of great knowledge to share with producers. Recently, I thought it was hilarious. He composed how to create a classical piece with the shape of a unicorn head, and he's produced music with Legos. He also made a track recording a sample from the planet Mars, which I thought was amazing, and it actually turned out to be like a really cool piece of music. Yeah, without further ado, thanks, Andrew, for joining us, man.
Happy to be here. Yeah, I'm a huge live nerd, obviously, so that's going to give us lots to talk about. But yeah, anything music and production, yeah. For
sure, dude. Yeah, well, recently you were able to host a session at Loop, Ableton's annual event that they had in LA this year, which I was there, and that's how we met. Yeah, it was amazing, dude, right? It was like one of the most inspiring moments of my life.
Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, no, we had a great time with it. And I mean, the whole point of it was to just celebrate that everybody has their own approach to creativity and producing, and like we'll come up with something original, even if it turned out to be 800 of us use the exact same material to sample. So it was really cool that actually worked out, and we had a huge variety of tracks come in.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. For everybody listening, if you didn't know, Andrew hosted a session. It was called Start Here, I believe.
Yeah.
And you basically had a bunch of people at Loop have the chance to take a sample, and then they had to create like a 90-second song composition out of that sample. And they had 12 hours to do it, right?
Yeah. Well, and it was worldwide too. It was posted online as well. I think we had maybe 50 submissions from people who are actually at Loop, and then 750 more from around the world. And we listened to as many as we could, like that night and the next morning before our actual presentation on stage, where we just went through a bunch. Me and two other producers were on stage talking about our own and like kind of deep diving with our production. But it was really cool, and something that we'd like to do again. And on my YouTube channel, I do a series called 4 Producers Flip the Same Sample, which was kind of the genesis of this idea. And that's something that I'm hoping to be able to do more regularly on my channel. I'm working on the 3rd episode now, but both of the previous ones have been really well received, like coming up on 2 million views each. And like all the comments are so positive, and like people are just so inspired by them, by seeing these different producers work their different ways and explain little bits about their process. It's really cool.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And there's really, I think you would agree, there's no like one perfect way to produce every track. It's so open-ended. It's so creative. you know, it's really cool because you have all these different creative people using a piece of content in their own personal way. And it's like always new and fresh to hear all these submissions. I'm sure it's kind of exciting. I want to learn a little bit more about you. So obviously, you know, we met at Loop. We didn't have a whole lot of time to actually really connect and dive deeper. But with everybody listening, I kind of want to just pick your brain. Like, how did you get started with music? Like, where did it start for you?
It's been a really long and weird and winding journey, but my mom sings and plays piano. My dad isn't so musical, but so I had this mom who knew quite a bit about classical music and was like really trying to push that on me and, you know, got me in piano lessons and stuff like that. And so I was doing this kind of formal music education that way, which I think was a really great foundation. But then also at the same time, just on my own, I was discovering that like the stereo we had at home had a tape deck and I could record whatever I wanted onto that. And the quality was terrible, but
of course,
I just started making songs and recording them like that and realizing that, you know, there are things beyond just like notes and instruments that go into what you hear and how that makes you feel. And, you know, that kind of like led down the path of producing and eventually discovering that you can use the computer to make music. And, you know, then I picked up a guitar in my teens. So it was kind of like this journey of every time I discovered something new about music, I was like, this is really cool. And I have to learn how to do that. And so it's just like picking up an instrument here and there, either, you know, what was at my school or what my friend had at his house or whatever. You know, every new type of music that I discovered, I would also just fall in love with. So I would be like listening to punk rock for a year and then be on to like Latin music and then hip hop and, you know, just bouncing all around. And I ended up starting this website when I was 19 where anyone who found it could like suggest an idea for a song. And so I started building an audience online, like pre-social media, with this website where I was just posting these like goofy songs based on weird suggestions that people had, like, oh, write a song about a cat and a bug who fall in love. I'm like, that sounds wacky. Let's do it.
That sounds like a hit. Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is.
And so, yeah, I was getting like, you know, a few thousand visitors to this website and just kind of grew it from there, where I was making this content, I guess now, before like the word content was even really around as like what we refer to the whole internet as. And then
at
the same time, you know, building up my production chops and like taking commissions from people as well. I started to make that my job. So yeah, it's even just like the internet portion of my career has been like this weird journey that brought me eventually to YouTube, where I just got interested in posting videos, and that kind of took off even quicker.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I love your videos. It seems like you definitely have your hand on video production as well. It's not just like, you know, somebody recording on their iPhone and just sending it up to the cloud. I mean, it's really high quality production videos that have been made. And I
think,
I definitely think, like, obviously getting in early on the social media side of the world probably has definitely really given you a huge upper hand and advantage as well for growing that following and engaging your audience in a lot of ways, I bet.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool. I think even for someone like me who I signed up for YouTube in 2006, it was probably more like 2010 that I was posting regularly, but that still feels early for sure, I think, for a lot of people. But then at the same time, I would say, like, you always wish you had started earlier.
Right.
And I feel like it wasn't until like everyone sort of got on board with it that I started feeling like I had to really learn about what are the things that I can do that will keep me standing out, and what really works and what's going to get people engaged. Because before that, because it was just kind of random and not so widespread, I was just really like flailing around and kind of doing whatever and not paying attention to like, oh, this post was more engaging or like got more clicks or got more shares. Like that was just not on my radar until it was also on everybody's radar.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And one of the things I love about your videos and what you do is you almost kind of have this like non-linear fashion of producing. Like you have this like playfulness where like, hey, I'm just going to grab Legos and I'm just going to like sample them being smacked together and create like, you know, a bass drum or something out of that. And it's fun. Like I encourage all the listeners to go out and check out your videos doing that and sampling, because it's a perfect example. I feel like you are a perfect example of taking a non-traditional approach. Like I'm not just going to go to splice.com and grab all the samples I need and just like make a song out of like 20 different loops that I've already made for me. Like you're actually creating sounds almost kind of like a Foley lab type of sense, and then just making it, manipulating it, doing sound design, which I think adds a whole new elements to the music. And I think people really feel that vibe when you're putting that extra love into your tracks and going the extra mile and doing the sound design and creating sounds that nobody has heard before. I think it adds an originality to your music and the videos that you produce.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think that like I have nothing against, I use Splice.
Oh, me too.
But
I love Splice.
Yeah. And you know, I have a sample pack on there, shameless plug. But
there you go.
I definitely, you know, I feel that I would rather start from a place where it's just me creating and trying to get what I can with the tools that I have that are like uniquely mine, you know, what's in my environment, or an instrument that's not like a plugin that everybody has access to, but maybe something that I've found in a random boutique or whatever, like stuff where at least for the starting point, there's something original there. But then, you know, if I feel like, oh, I just really need a perfect like big room house kick right now,
yeah,
it's going to be easier for me to find one online than to make one myself. But yeah, I think you know, I'd hope that I could encourage any producers out there to like get a little more experimental with the way that they come up with their sounds. Yeah,
for sure. I think that's kind of a good segue, because one thing I want to do is kind of dive into a little bit of your production workflow and process. Mm-hmm. So I know we tapped on a little bit earlier, like there is no one perfect way to like jump into a song every time, you know, but if you had to kind of describe starting a song from scratch, like, do you usually jump into the rhythm, like the drums, or do you usually jump into like just grabbing like a random sample that you create and record? How is like your songwriting process as far as like getting started from the very beginning?
Yeah, I like this question because I do get it from time to time, and I feel like there's no right way, and it's not like there's a particular pattern that I follow. I think there are lots of different ways that I've discovered work, and then at the same time I'm always just open to something new happening and trying something I've never done before. And so it's like sometimes someone will say something in conversation and I'm like, that's such a crazy weird phrase, it sounds like a song title or like a hook or whatever, I could go off of that. Or, you know, if you're messing around on an instrument, you find a melody you like, you find a chord progression you like, you know, find a synth texture that you like. I feel like almost everything can be a starting point.
Yeah. Like a bag of chocolate.
yeah, anything that even just makes a sound sometimes, you know, anything could inspire you. I guess there are like a few things that tend to work better than others. Like if your goal is really like, oh, I want to figure out like how I can make this track, like having some kind of end vision is always really good. Like, yeah, it's great to be very open and let things go where they want to go, but also at some point I think you have to be like, well, this is going to be a piano sonata, not gangster rap. And then you know, that affects every decision that you make with it. But yeah, I don't know, or like I think if you're writing like songs, you know, a melody and a chord progression, that's a really great place to start. It's easier doing that than going from a drum loop or going from, one thing I'll say is going from a melody to lyrics in general, I've found is easier than going from lyrics to a melody. Yeah, I don't know.
I would totally agree with that. I know 100%. In my experience, I've found the same to be true. Is it's easier to write lyrics around a melody than probably the other way around.
Try and like fit these exact syllables that you've written into something that you want to hum. Yeah.
Right. Is that how you ended up doing your 300 words in 1 minute? You just like had a ton of lyrics and you're just like, I'm gonna shove them in. You had a video. You had a video on that where you did some crazy fast speed rap. It was very cool.
Those ones are like, When I know that the rap is going to be fast, I definitely think about the types of sounds that I'm using, and I'll like switch out words that just flow together better, generally like having less consonants or less of the same consonant in a row, so your mouth doesn't have to like repeat the same shape, but can kind of fluidly go back and forth through a few different things, so that it just makes it, roll off the tongue easier, better. But I guess writing rap in general is a totally different approach, because you can have a lot more freedom with the rhythm, and you can kind of just switch rhyme schemes if you want. You don't have to stick to like landing the rhymes at the exact same place, but you can get really playful with it. So that's something I really enjoy when I'm coming up with that kind of stuff, is playing with the meter and the internal rhyme.
No, I mean, that's cool. Yeah, it's most of the music we listen to in the mainstream today is extremely rhythm based anyway.
For sure. Yeah.
It seems like it's extremely rhythmic. Whereas maybe, back in the 70s and 80s, it was more progressive and it was more about the hooks and the melodies. I think it still is, but it seems like even with the melodies now are very like percussive. And a lot of
it's true.
Especially in pop even now.
Yeah, there's like syncopation and a bit of more of like a repetitiveness of the phrasing to like make things catchy, I feel like, rather than my favorite word, mellifluous sort of melodies that, float around and are just...
How do you spell that?
I don't know, Melliflous, I want to say.
Yeah, we'll go with that. You can Google that later if you want.
I don't even know exactly what it means, but in my mind it's like melodic, but even more melodic.
Oh, wow, that's deep.
Yeah, it's like the next level of melody.
It is. All right, man. Well, I had a couple other questions like related to producing that I wanted to make sure we touch on here. So, what are some Ableton, since we all are Ableton nerds here, what are some Ableton tools that you use for maybe it's just like producing these melodies we're talking about, or even like sound design? Like, what are some of your favorite go-to devices or things inside Ableton that you use?
Well, so I was talking to a graphic designer friend a while ago, and I really love his work. It's like super dynamic and very visually striking, but also like when you pare it down or we kind of break it down, it's actually like simple. And I was talking to him and he's like, what I use all the time and I barely use anything else is just like cut and paste. Like I just cut shapes out and I move them around and I put them where I think they look good. And
that's awesome.
I feel a kinship with that, because I'm not, as much as like I get in there and I spend time with it, I'm like, chopping a piece of a sound, I pitch shift it, I use like the different warp modes, and I draw automation curves to make the sound do what I want it to do, I guess. But as much as I love a really great plugin now and then, I don't find I'm relying on effects as much as just like these really basic sort of like speed it up, slow it down, reverse it, like kind of more raw audio processes. So really just like knowing when to use them or what order to use them in, or how to combine them with the sounds that you're working with to get the desired result.
Yeah, man, that's really good. We had a couple of people in the last few podcast episodes. We were talking similarly about this type of thing, and it's easy to get lost in plugin land, right? Because Facebook hits you, especially around like the Black Friday, Christmas holidays. It's like, oh, if I want to be a good producer, I need to go out and spend all my money on plugins, And the reality is simple can be better. And like you were saying, just messing with the clips and the tools that you already have inside Ableton is real valuable. Like, I saw a video earlier today when I was watching your channel, and it was just using, transposition within the clip auto envelope, and you can just transpose the pitch of the clip for audio, and you can get really creative with just that alone, and the warp modes, like you were saying, you get really creative with what you have. You don't need to go out and spend your whole piggy bank just to try to make some really crazy sounds. So the warp stuff is great in Ableton, and that's one thing that I haven't been in another DAW for a little while, but that's something that I think they still have really like
head and shoulders above the rest is like how much you can just manipulate raw audio like that. But yeah, I think it's true. Like there's a lot of plugins that'll be like, this will get a great stutter effect or a great like record drop effect. And, you know, if you spend a bit of time with it, you can do those things just so quickly with a few, you know, clicks and mouse drags. And yeah. It's, you know, certain plugins will allow for a certain kind of workflow or whatever that might suit you better. But then a lot of the times it's, you know, just spending time in your Ableton timeline that'll get you there.
Yeah, for sure. You had a really great quote. If I can remember it correctly, it was, you said something about how I've been using Ableton Live for about 12 years and hang out with Ableton more than I do human beings. And I was like,
yeah.
That's me.
Relatable. Man, I should tweet that or something. I should find the perfect nugget to make that a shareable little thing. But it's no, it's true.
I was saying Ableton won't always let you down the same way that people will, especially with backup now. So you can't lose your project files.
Oh man, yeah, it's always there for you.
Yeah, you can lose friends, but you won't lose your projects. That's why we love Ableton. Yeah, no, that's cool, man. Okay, so we did talk about plugins, so we have to now say something about that. I have to ask you, I saw in your video that you gave a shout out to Arturia. I love Arturia. Are there any other plugins for composition that you really enjoy?
Oh man. Okay. I'm actually going to pull up Ableton right now just to like go through and see what so the first thing that comes to mind is in Live 10, they added the drum bus and I just love that thing.
Oh, it's gold. It really
when I first heard about it, I was kind of like, oh, is everybody's drums going to sound the same now or whatever? But it's not like that at all. It's just like, these are the things that you always want to be doing to your drums to get them fatter and punchier.
Right.
So yeah, it's great. It's literally on all my drum buses now.
And not even drums. You can put it on like guitar or even other, you know, even a piano. Like you can really beef up a piano if you want to make it real plucky.
I got to do that. I mean, it is just like kind of a fancy compressing, distorting.
Mm-hmm.
So good. I'm using a lot of Native Instrument stuff.
Okay.
I love it. You know, one thing that's really great is Reactor, because the user library for Reactor is amazing. So like there's all kinds of plugins that you can buy for the Reactor plugin that you've already bought. But if you just get the full version of Reactor and then go to this user library that they have online, there's like tens of thousands of patches that people have designed that will do anything, like
that's cool.
Granular synthesis or like a perfect remake of a Juno or a Prophet or whatever.
Nice.
And it's just nuts. So that's kind of an all-in-one, like whatever you want to do if you can get the hang of the Reactor interface.
I've been hearing a lot about Reactor. I know a lot of producer friends that use it, and I definitely, this is inspiring to me. This is confirmation. I need to go out and start playing with it more.
Yeah, it's super cool. For kind of like utilitarian stuff, FabFilter and Universal Audio are sort of like almost everything I use as far as just mixing.
I saw the UAD interface in one of your videos and I was like, this guy, he knows. I love UAD.
I've been on the UA stuff for like maybe 10 years or something now.
Yeah.
And
they make great stuff, man.
Yeah, they're just solid. Yeah.
They are. Yeah, I was at the AES convention about 3 years ago.
Nice.
And in New York, and I got to talk with some of the guys from UAD, and I got to talk to some of the guys from like Little Labs and all these other amazing analog gear companies. And I asked all of them, you know, like Empirical Labs, I asked them, I was like, you know, hey, what did it sound like when they, you know, sampled Fatso, or when they sampled, you know, like the Voice of God, you know, all these great analog pieces of gear? And all of them said UAD, like they nailed it. It sounds almost exactly the same. And to hear that from the actual manufacturers that these plugins Universal Audio is making, for them to actually say, yeah, it sounds just like the real thing, that's when you know.
That's amazing. I didn't actually know that. Like I was told, you know, using them myself, and then I'd heard some like pretty, you know, well-known mix engineers saying that they've A/B'd them and they can't hear the difference. But if it's like the original manufacturer of that piece of gear saying it too, that's amazing.
It is. Yeah. Sorry, I cut you off. So you were talking, UAD was another one. Is there any others?
Oh yeah, no. I mean, those are kind of the big ones, I guess, as far as
which Fab
effects.
Filter plugins were you referring to?
Okay, like the Pro Q is all over everything. It's kind of like my go-to EQ.
Yes.
And I use the Pro R, the reverb, a fair bit.
That sounds amazing, doesn't it?
It's super lush.
Yeah,
and like quite flexible. Clean.
It's a very transparent sound.
Yeah.
Even their Pro L2, the new limiter that they came out with, sort of new. It's not that new, I guess. But yeah, they came out with it, I think, earlier this year. And man, you can slam that limiter really hard without making your speakers sound like they're crying. Like it actually,
I might need to try that out.
Yeah, and you can go up to 32 times oversampling. So for those of you listening who don't know what oversampling is, it's basically just allowing a higher quality playback by reinserting the frequencies, and it just allows for a larger dynamic range, so it sounds more transparent. But it's going to make your computer cry really hard, because I've never successfully gotten it up to 32. But the fact that that's even possible with technology today just blows my mind with how good of a transparent sound you can actually get by having that much oversampling.
Yeah, man, that's nuts. Yeah, I mean, I have been pretty happy with the Universal Audio Precision limiters, the one that I always use on my master. But yeah, I've been hearing about the Pro L, and yeah, a buddy of mine who does some mastering, like that's the one that he has at the very end of his mastering chain. So I'm like, okay,
for good reasons.
I'm looking at that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So let's talk to us a little bit about what you're doing now. So obviously you're doing a lot of YouTube content. You're uploading videos, like sharing tips and tricks of how you do things in the studio. What projects are you currently working on right now that we can look forward to? Yeah,
well, I've got like a whole bunch of series, ton of EPs basically in the works. And there's like a couple that I like. So earlier this year, I dropped 2 EPs on the same day, and they were completely different. Like one was acoustic ballads, the other was like beats,
more of a
electronic, instrumental. And so I really like that idea. What's that?
I said it's really good. Both of them, I heard them.
Oh, cheers! Thanks.
Good stuff.
Yeah, and I just like the idea of doing that. I'm starting to think of somewhat regularly making that my MO, like just. Because I'm so all about different genres and not wanting to be pegged down, I thought it would be really fun to drop 2 things at a time that are a completely different mood from each other. So anyway, I have something in mind for that right now, where they're actually both going to be electronic, but one's very beautiful ambient, like I don't think there's any percussion on it at all. And the other one is crazy, like noisy beats and IDM and stuff like that. So that's coming up. Cool. Yeah, just a few different types of music. And I'm really liking EPs lately, more than albums, just for just being fun and listen through it in one sitting.
Sure.
No filler. But yeah, besides that, YouTube's always happening, and there's going to be the next episode of 4 Producers Flip the Same Sample in January.
Nice. Can you explain that for the people listening that don't know what that is?
Yeah, we're going to be, I'm trying to get it to be maybe a once every 2 to 3 months thing on my channel, where I invite 3 producers on. We all use the same sample as the starting point of a track that we create. And it always turns out crazy different. So the next episode actually has Virtual Riot on it.
Oh,
and,
nice.
He just destroyed this track. Like the track he made is insane. But
that's great.
Yeah, look forward to that. And then otherwise, I'm actually not entirely sure what 2019 holds for me on YouTube. I'd like to kind of play with the format a bit more, but I'm also I might upload a little bit less just to like get into more of the original music I want to make, and then finding the right ways to share about that. I did really like there was a sort of period of time where I felt like I was using my own music I was releasing as the material for tutorials, which I think was this perfect synergistic way to both give anybody some entertainment, give them some music, or as well as for the people who are looking for those music production tips and tutorials to feed that as well. And then of course, I'm getting to make the music I want to make. So
Right.
yeah.
No, that's a brilliant strategy, and it works for you. It does, because your videos are fun. They're entertaining. One of my friends called it edutainment. It's like educating, but it's also entertaining at the same time. Yeah. So and you said something a second ago. I kind of want to touch on real quick. Is you talked about your previous 2 albums that you dropped not that long ago, and they had completely different sounds and vibes. What kind of advice would you, because I hear this a lot from people, what kind of advice would you give to somebody that was trying to find quote unquote their sound? I think a lot of producers hear that, and a lot of producers of all experience levels are like still trying to find, what is my sound? What is my niche? What is my genre? Like what kind of advice would you give to somebody who is like seeking an answer to that?
So yeah, it's a tough one for me because obviously I'm outputting stuff in a lot of different styles. And I also, I kind of like the idea that I could just on a dime kind of flip and do something very unexpected. But the one thing that really kind of became mine in the last few years was this found sound thing, I call it. The whole sampling of weird things to create music, or even in a kind of subcategory of that, the whole idea of creating an entire track out of one item or one sound, or like just one plugin or something like that. That's sort of become like a thing now that I see a lot of people doing.
Yeah.
That's a really great exercise. But I think that ended up happening with that is that I found this thing and I wasn't seeing a lot of other people doing it. And so I was like playing with it. And it kind of came from trying to incorporate slightly unorthodox sounds in my songs. So like, it would be a completely normal song, but the snare drum is just going to be me hitting a water bottle or something like that. And then just like more and more that kind of stuff crept in. The traditional instruments slipped out. And then the one that really like drove it home for me was when I made this. It was actually a sponsored video for a jeans company, and I got 1,000 pairs of jeans, and I just like made all these sounds with them.
Oh, wow.
And the whole track is made out of jeans. Yeah, well, I was like, I could do this with one pair of pants, but if I can say it's 1,000 pairs of pants, more people are going to click on it. And that's what happened.
That's amazing. And now you never have to buy pants ever again. You can keep these.
Yeah, no, I'm set.
It's going to take you a while to break all those jeans in, though, because everybody knows jeans. You got to wear them for a while before they actually like are good.
That's true. I mean, how many do you need in life? Like 10?
You'll never have to do laundry again. That's perfect, dude. That's awesome.
That's amazing. But yeah, it was just like following, I guess, something that I particularly found interesting and continuing to like hone in on it. And also, I guess where I was going with that was like after that jeans video dropped, I noticed the response to it. And I think that when, as much as we'd like to create for ourselves and really make it an expression of ourselves, I think there's something to it when you realize that other people are responding to something in particular or connecting with something in particular. And that can for sure be a hint towards what what makes you special.
Sure.
Because that's standing out to them.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, man. That is very true. And I, kind of going back to what you were just saying is, in my experience, I find that comparison really kills creativity. So it's not like trying to be like somebody else as much as it is creating something that connects with people and connects with yourself and with an audience. And that's like something you enjoy and something that you can feel good about putting out into the world. And I think,
totally.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think people resonate with that authenticity of like, I'm just going to be playful in my music. I'm going to experiment. I'm going to try something new, and I'm not going to force it, and just kind of let it be what it is. And
yeah. And actually, like on that note, I've heard from so many people over and over when they're like, showing their friends their tracks that they've been making, the ones that often get the most positive response are the ones that they just kind of like let happen. And they were really quick and they weren't overthinking it. And maybe they didn't even work on it as hard as the other ones, but it was sort of the natural stuff that came out that turns out to for whatever reason, like resonate with the people listening to it. So there's something about that just comes through somehow. Yeah.
Yeah. with like electronic music today, it's almost like anybody can make music. It's kind of like a really cool thing that didn't exist even like a decade ago because the technology wasn't really there where it is now.
Yeah, the access that we have now to tools to create music is basically unprecedented. Like, we're really in an amazing time, and that's something that I have been trying to celebrate on my channel and trying to encourage other people to find too, is just the joy in learning about music and expressing yourself with it, and just playing with it, and that is getting so much more accessible. Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, and that's one reason I love doing this podcast, is meeting people like you, because I think we all can learn from each other in some way, and obviously some people are way more experienced than others or whatever, but like yourself, you've been doing this a really long time. But even for myself, the students that I teach, I feel like I'm learning just as much from them as they're learning from me in a lot of ways.
Yeah, no, totally. And I still learn all the time, like just from the most random places. And as much as I think, I'm pretty confident in what I'm able to do, and I'm putting out a lot of stuff that I'm really proud of, there's still like times where some 15-year-old tweets me and they're like, hey, check out this track I made. And I listen to it and it's better than anything that I did that week. And I'm like, awesome. This is amazing. And that's great. Good for you. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, and I think that like shows character for you, that you're a good guy. The fact that you even listen to, something that somebody sent you on Twitter shows that you care.
I mean, I can't get to them all. I wish I could. Right. I'm really inspired actually listening to the tracks that other people who are following me are making. But yeah, every once in a while when I have time, I do listen to a few and try and leave a comment if I can.
Yeah.
Well, just to encourage people. But yeah, like there's so much amazing creativity out there. And yeah, like you said, the fact that anyone can make music now, I think it's causing us to see so much more of that creativity and stuff that we never would have known was there. Along with the fact that, with social media now, anybody can almost reach anybody.
That's
else.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah. And social media is a beautiful thing outside of the fake news. It's actually it's a great way. And I think for producers or, anybody that's like educating or like, growing a following, I think it's really important just to stay connected with people and recognize that they're people and not just little like buttons, and I think you do a great job of that.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
So yeah, man, was there anything else that you wanted to share with us? I know that you've got things to do today. I really appreciate your time. This has been awesome chatting with you.
No, thanks for having me. I did just promote the next 4 producers, got music coming out.
Yeah.
Follow me everywhere.
For sure.
And, thanks for inviting me to this.
Follow Andrew on YouTube. He's also on Spotify, Apple Music, Bandcamp. Your website, Andrew Huang at andrewhuang.com. It's ANDREWHUANG.com. Go check out his website. I believe all your music's on there. You can follow his videos and links and social media, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff, all the major social icons. Yeah, for sure, dude. Well, once again, thanks for coming out and joining us on this podcast episode. We'll definitely be looking forward to the next producer sample flip that you have going on. And go check out his EPs. Everybody, if you look in the show notes in this podcast episode, you'll see all those links as well to Andrew's website and to follow his music and his future happenings. So once again, dude, thanks for joining us. You're a great guy. I love what you do. You're helping a lot of people, teaching people, and having fun in the process. And I'm excited to see more.
Yeah, thanks so much. Thanks for the chat, and keep up what you're doing here too. Looking forward to sharing this when it comes out.
Yeah, absolutely. For everybody listening, as we wrap up this episode, this podcast is sponsored by liveproducersonline.com. We're a community of Ableton Live users, connecting you to professionals like Andrew. We have several Ableton certified trainers on our website you can do private lessons through. We will be doing a lot more paid webinars in the near future. Anybody that is a basic or pro member can either join or access replays of all the paid webinars that we are doing. The next one we have is coming up in early January, and end of December, we have John Myers. He is a gold and platinum audio engineer. So definitely encourage you to check out. He's going to be sharing some tips on creating high quality mixes in the studio. So check that out. That's coming out soon. But once again, liveproducersonline.com. Go check out the website, sign up for a free membership, and we'll see you on the other side. Thanks again, Andrew, for joining us. Appreciate you, man. Have an awesome night, and we'll see you soon.
All right, take it easy.
This podcast is sponsored by liveproducersonline.com, a community of Ableton Live users connecting you to the pros to learn today's music production.